Hello, guys. Welcome to today's show. Where this is the interactive solution. It is the public show where we try to lay every marker on the ground. We take issues head on and we talk through them as much as we understand them, with the mind to give an understanding and roadmap that help people to come to certain understanding and decision making. So today we'll be looking at what is required of a country to be truly independent. Independence is one word that many of us know about, but we really would want to dive deep to know how this relates to the nation state, to a country as a matter of fact. So today we'll be looking at independence as it relates to a country, how a country can be described to be independent. We're talking if a country is economically stable, does that confer independence? A country that is politically free from another nation, could that amount to being independent? So these are some of the questions that we'll be going through today. And the idea is to help us to understand so many things that have been going on recently in the world, where uh, some state and international players have crossed boundaries in the effort to probably foster their national interests and whatever. So today we are going to x-ray some of these nuances with the mind to bring in understanding, so that when a country is said to be independent, against the backdrop of what you may glean from our discussions today, you'll now be able to really assess for yourself and know for yourself if truly such a country could be described as an independent country. So as always, the guys who lay the markers on the ground, who leave everything on the floor, we don't leave anything in the tank at the end of our 1 hour, some minutes duration of this talk show. We don't leave anything in the tank. We drop them here on the studio floor, and at the end of the day, we go home feeling empty, knowing that we have dropped everything that we really have in our tank, with the understanding that people will be duly served and well informed. With this information, obviously, will help in decision making and charting a certain roadmap that will help us in our interactions, in our walks of life, and some other things that might really come up. Today, as always, we have the eggheads in the house, and I know some of them are already knocking on my door, and as they come in, as they knock, I'll be bringing them in one after the other. And it is also my pleasure to tell you that Jackie is back. She had gone on a kind of voluntary work somewhere in Africa, and she's back. I know that she came back with a lot of experiences, and probably this one will play. Whatever she came back will help us to, could help her to, talk us through some curves, through some confusions and difficult patches. So, Jack, you're welcome. Even though I will formally welcome you when the show starts, but just for the purpose of the audience, for them to know that you're back. So today, it is the requirement of for independence of a country. The countries that are said to be independent, what are the requirements for such? What do they have? And what should they have to be described as an independent country? So when we have that, I know that it will help us to really understand what independence is truly all about. Some people have flag independence, some people have political independence, but the independence that we are talking about, I think, is holistic. It's not just about political independence. It's not about economic independence. It's not about some of the things that some of us know about independence. It's a conglomeration. It's a coming together of such stuff that will bring about what we describe as independence. And like I said, we'll test some of these words. We'll find definitions and we'll try to put them in play in context to really know if what we are talking about is in consonance with what is happening in the world. So The network is at the moment playing up, but I know that we have always negotiated that curve. So while we wait for you guys to knock on the door, I'd truly like to invite you guys, some of you who are still not tuned in, to come in and join us and come with your questions, come with your contributions. Importantly, your presence also will add flavor to what we have. Mr. Nadi is his knock is come out louder. So that we can kick off this discussion in earnest. Mary, I am. Hello, Sam. How are you?
The tea.
Sam, I hail you. How are you? It's
I
been
heard
a
it, sir.
very, it's been a very busy week for you, I guess.
Always, like always, my brother. We got to
Yeah,
get all these things sorted, haven't we?
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
So I hope I'm sending you an invite for anybody. I've sent it to you.
Oh, you said, what are you sending it to? You sending it to my WhatsApp?
Yeah, I just sent you the invite. I don't know if it has gone to your WhatsApp,
Okay,
but I just
okay.
sent you one. I'm
I,
bringing
ca-
in.
I can
See,
I can actually go off. If I go off now, I will have to be re-invited.
okay. So I
Yes.
think we just have to. I'm bringing in Onyemere anyway. Let me bring him in. Onyemere is here now.
Oman Ben Salah.
Nah.
Uh,
Uh,
the man that actually he shakes the man that shakes me sometimes.
yeah, you
I'm
check,
not. I'm
you
not
check,
checking
you check.
anybody. We just. We
Yeah,
just. We just contributing to global
yeah,
community.
yeah,
Of course.
Yeah.
you check each other, and then that is the fun of it. That is why we're
Of,
here.
of
Not
course,
just
of course.
physical, not just. It's not a physical thing. It's a intellectual and brain mental activity that you guys do here. So
Absolutely.
I think,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Where
I
is
think
where is
while
Jackie? Where is Jackie? I don't know why Jackie is not in yet.
Jackie is not here yet, but while we wait for her, I think we'll just have to start off so that when she comes in, she will join the beat. So
Okay.
I've already introduced the topic, and before we go on, I just like to tell you guys that we have to be very, very brief to be able to take all the questions that I have for you guys. So if you don't
Okay.
mind, then when I feel that you're stretching it, I can cut in, and then and I wouldn't want anybody to feel offended about that. It's just for us to really, give out what we have for today's show. So,
Okay.
yeah, having said that, Ms. Nadi, I just want you to briefly tell us what independence or when a country, what does it mean for a country to be truly independent? If you're talking about independence, what does it mean?
Well, thank you, the team. I wish Jackie. I don't know what's happening to her. Huh?
Jackie could still come.
Yeah.
She
Okay.
still
Okay.
join, but
Okay. Uh,
yeah,
let me crack on then while we're waiting for her as well, because
yeah,
well, independence for most of us is so some of us see it from the angle of when a certain colonial power, when their flags are being lowered and a new flags, a new country emerges from maybe from a colonial system. Yeah, but that word independence or whatever way you want to refer it is it's got a deeper meaning than just lowering of flags and uplifting a new flag and all of that.
yeah,
So it's in my view, in my basic understanding, it's goes around the three different sections of society. When a society have gotten a certain liberty in the political self-government, which is what we mostly see as the independent, and we economic self-reliance. when society can economically depend on themselves and not being swayed or coerced into or pressured by loans and all of that pressure them to submit that same sovereignty which they have achieved politically. They submit it through economic, relying on a different, a superior or whatever you want to refer it. The third part of independence is also the social cohesion, because when you want to refer independence, it has to be a certain group of, individual or society having a common value that they have, that this is what we hold dear, that this is what we think will move us together. This is one ideology that we hold dear, that we are sharing among each other. As long as these three things are not, abiding to whatever people refer to be independence, that independence is half-baked independence, because when those influences and those cohesions start pushing in, that is the term when we get what we are having currently in our society, where we have a sovereign country somewhere else, and a lot of us wouldn't relate why this is happening, because we are independent just by the lowering of the flags. We're not actually independent because we are so much even dependent. We are, in fact, in some cases, if I have to, debate it in a different analogy or argument, we are even more dependent than we are independent, because we are still so much relying on most of our commodities, and the most important part of it, the economic part of independence. While you're not economically independent, whatever political independence you have is insignificant. That's social and economical independence is the most basic part of independence that actually defines a society, whatever you want to call it, a state or whatever, what it means to have independence. Thank you, DT. I should have given you some references, but let me cut it there while
I think this one will suffice for now, and thank you very much for having given such an intro to this topic. Onyemere, Jack, you're welcome. Meantime, it's good to have you back.
Jack,
thank you.
Yeah, how was your trip to Rwanda?
It was really amazing. Uganda and Rwanda.
I hope you brought back some goodies from Rwanda.
Yeah, it's amazing. Thank you.
I know you had a lot of the feel of the sun from Africa. It's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Onyemere, I just want to, I want to have your own perspective on this independence issue. From coming from the economic point of view, because most times what we see as independence is when you lower the flag, like it was done in Lagos some years back, and it was done in so many other African countries. What is the economic aspect of this? What is the importance of the economic aspect of independence when you are talking about independence?
Well, anyway, thank you so much. I think one thing we have to bear in mind is that no nation or country exists in a vacuum. All of us are entangled in this web of alliances, because we need alliances, and that we are also dependent on geopolitical relationships and international treaties and all these trade agreements. So to be independent, you also have to be, it demands also the ability for you to be bound by other principles, other whether legal or cultural or economic or trade or otherwise. And then independence is not an absolute term. We also have what we call interdependence, and then because that's also the beautiful part of independence, because normally we see independence from the angle of colonized countries about all the things that has to be related to lowering the flags and declaring independence just like that. But we're in a global order, and then the capacity to be independent can also be another capacity to be interdependent to another country, because we have national, geopolitical, and global order. So in terms of economic independence, we need to design. That's also about designing and developing a sustainable economic growth, whereby we make sure that we integrate in global order equally without depending on external help. But it's also a way of also seeing ourselves collaborating and then building alliance with the one that is more economically powerful, in order to adapt to their own concept, and then use our own concept to add to their own concept, in order to develop something that will be sustainable to our own interest, in a way that helps us to define what we want and then follow what we want to develop our own country, and then develop our own economic model. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That was just brief and then, straight to the point. Jack, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Yeah, somebody just left. I think it's Sam that left. Jack, I want to come from the context of self-sufficiency. And when we are talking about self-sufficiency, we're not really talking only about economics.
Mm-hmm.
There are also variables of self-sufficiency. So can a country be truly independent without being self-sufficient?
From my knowledge, what I believe is that to be independent, you have to be self-sufficient. Even speaking in terms of general terms, as an individual, if you continue to rely on somebody to do something for you, your independence is kind of taken away. For example, I'm just going to generalize it a bit. For example, in a relationship, if you continue to rely on your partner to give you everything, even if it's like 50p, £1, one time, you're not independent, because if they say no, you're not having that. You're not going to be able to have what you want, because you're dependent on them, which for me is not good. So you need to be self-sufficient to clarify yourself as independent. So when we look at example in Singapore, they actually, it shows that it's possible they can be independent, because they import everything, from their food to their energy and even their technology, financial. They do everything in-house. So in that way, they're not dependent on any other country to help them to get the best energy or help them to grow food. They do everything in Singapore by themselves. So they're not really dependent on anyone. So if anything happens today, they can be able to stand on their own 2 feet and say, you know what, we can take care of that. When you look at another term, South Sudan, so despite political independency, they still face economic instability due to lack of self-sufficiency in essential goods. So with South Sudan and maybe many other countries, they rely on other people for their food, for their energy, for everything. So if those people withhold that from them, so they won't be able to be self-sufficient. So I believe to be independent, you need to be self-sufficient. So I believe both of them work hand in hand.
Thank you very much, Jack. And the independence, economic independence, and self-sufficiency have a kind of a close link to it. I wasn't just talking about the economics. You also have the cultural and every other thing. But I think I'm okay with what you just gave us in that remark. Mr. Nnadi, over to you now.
Yes,
I just want to know how historical experiences have helped shape a nation's understanding of independence, because over time, when you don't even know where you're coming from, you might not really know when you get to your destination. So it's always good to have a kind of historical perspective to this understanding of this issue about independence. So when you have that, you'll be able to really know if you're on that mark or on that map of having yourself defined as an independent country? What are the historical experiences? How do they shape a nation's understanding of independence?
Well, the thing. Thank you. I stepped out because I got a call from somewhere. Sorry, I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Well, in the context of what question you asked me, I would say that in based on historical perspective of this being independent or society, I would say that was it Georgia? I think George Santaya in his words, he said those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it again. And if we cannot remember what have happened yesterday, or if we cannot take lessons from what have happened to other people. And I was happy when Jackie was mentioned Singapore. I don't want to go too much because we don't have time to digress and build a bit of background. But Singapore would have been a very good example, or even China, if we want to go even further, or even South Africa or Rwanda. These are countries that have set a pace how people can come from the deepest dungeon to the brightest of the world. And history is a teacher. And for us, independence is the exam, is the final exam. Is if you have obtained this independence and actually understands what this independence means, not just from what you think it is, but looking at the historical trends or traits from how other people have actually tried to, strive from going from the deepest aspect of what independence is. And it boils down to what we've been discussing about colonialism and all of that. We can sit down here and shovel a heap of criticisms and allegations and this and that to the colonial masters. But if we don't wake up and shove our sleeves to start looking at not just from the angle of what have been done against us, but what can we actually do to salvage the whole situation? Now look at South Africa. They fought apartheid. In fact, for how many years they were striving and they were struggling. And let's even come back. I don't want to go too much with the Western civilization because most of us may assume that they have got everything all sorted out for themselves. But let's look at even Vietnam. Vietnam was actually, their identity was actually carved. Their independence was actually carved from the rods of war. They fought their way to their independence. And let's go even closer to Rwanda. I think, Jackie have made a little bit, exposure on her experience in Rwanda, and Rwanda is a testament that history may teach us a good lessons if we are ready to filter out what this good lesson actually is, and for us, that history defines the psychological DNA of any society. That you're being able to understand, being able to filter out this historical trends of any society, knowing that if we continue to blame the British while we sustain our tribalical, what do I call it, antecedent or whatever, shelter, we always protect our own. This man is from Igbo. We should look at Rwanda and see how that have actually, what the result of tribal affiliations have, what result they got from having to embrace their cultural identity rather than having a national a common ground where even though you are from the Hutu or Shina or whatever, I can't remember. I think Jackie will help me with that. If we are looking at it from that angle, that when they are very much entrenched with their tribalistic ideology, that this nation was literally in a devastated state, that they got to a war that was, even in today's world, have been described as one of the one of the most horrendous genocide of human history, and relate that to what Rwanda is today. The Rwanda of today is the bright and morning star of the African, because they have looked at the history and see that this tribal sentiment will only lead us to crisis. The only thing that will make us strive or even compete with wherever colonial masters or whatever slavery or whatever history that we had in the past is when we are able to combine all this effort together and work in one front. And that is the testimony of Rwanda. So history teaches us that lesson. And history is the DNA of any society, is the psychological DNA of any society. Any society that have not remembered what have happened yesterday, not just to them, but to the other. Let me end it with this. There's a proverb in our place where a man called 3 of his children and he was asking them, my boy, how many times would something happen to you? Then you will learn your lesson. The first one said 5 times or 3 times. He was very upset with him. Till the last one, I said, Dad, if it happens to me once, and sometimes I would even learn from when it happens to others. So thank you, Mr. T. Thank you for the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just like you said, the history is the psychological and cultural DNA of any society. And with that, when you have a constant understanding of what had happened in the past, it will help you to understand how you face the future. Thank you very much. Onyemere, I'd like to ask you this quickly. What is the role of military might in the definition of independence for a nation? When a country is said to be militarily, in ascendancy or militarily superior, does it confer independence on such a nation?
But that's what we are talking about, and that was I was engaging with before, because independence means so many things to people, and then so many things to different countries. Because I just have to comment a little bit about what you said before. Can a nation be independent? I was just trying to, can a nation be independent without being self-sufficient? Yeah, a nation can be independent without being self-sufficient to some extent, and even to a large extent, because you might have a well-organized society, you might have a rule of law, you might have a well-stabilized political system, but also you can be dependent on others in terms of technology, in terms of food, in terms of several other things, in terms of different importation. That's why I said we have different stages of independence, apart from what has happened before, because we normally look at independence from what has happened before. And that's also nice to look at it, but also there is this more critical side that we can view independence. And when you view independence in that way, you see that most countries are not really independent. Because if we talk about the geopolitical side, you see that we are dependent on each other. There is something we get from Ghana. There's something we get from other countries. There's something other countries get from us. We have oil, we have something, but we don't have everything. That's also, apart from this colonialization of a thing of colonialism, this one is even the minor part of what we're talking about, but it's still part of what we're describing. So a particular country that is powerful might see itself in terms of, okay, we have a robust and representative government, we have rule of law, we have engaged citizenry, we have stabilized civil society, and then in terms of economic independence, and then they might see themselves they are in the forefront of defining the economic model, and then of also contributing in pushing civilization forward. And that's also what we talked about the last time, which I didn't want to get into details because it was excellently clear that civilization left a lot of things for us when during the colonization. Of course, we will agree in that, but we don't want to get into it because we've just said a lot prior the other meeting. So that side, I was always talking about the definition. Who is in the forefront of defining secular theories, the worldview, and all of those things, and then you can see philosophical point of view, when we even use all those concepts. Who is defining them? That's also part of being interdependent and also being independent. So you can be independent in the national level, in the geopolitical level, but also you're not independent in the supranational level. Because if you see EU, most of the countries are no longer independent.
I am talking about military force.
Yes, I'm getting to your question. I'm getting to your question. Your question is whether military force contributes to the idea of being.
We can confer military independence on a nation. That you are militarily superior, does it confer independent status on a nation?
Yeah, that's where I'm getting at. So I'm getting at the question: can it confirm independent status to a nation? That's what I'm getting at. So you see now, when before you are able to build a military might, we also think about the economic side of being independent, defining the economic model, and then we also talk about the media side of being independent, fair and free press that is capable of holding the leaders accountable, but also capable of informing the society equitably. Sometimes the media can be biased with all the echo chambers out there, social media, and then even financial support. But then if we look at the military level, part of that power, global order, because somebody is also in charge of global order. Global order wasn't formed just like that. We moved from the national to supranational and then to global order. In that global order, somebody's in charge. There are different types of humanitarian laws. There are different types of treaties there that is guiding global order. And that is why, to some extent, somebody would just get into initiate engagement with a particular country in order to start building a military base there. It's not just any country that can build it, it's a particular country. And that is also where the interdependence works now, where they have a lot of agreements before all these things are happening. So if a nation feels that they have a higher budget and they are the ones leading the interdependency of the security, whereby there's a global agreement about what's going on, even though there's also going to be disagreement about all these things. So that particular nation might feel that they have the military, they have this military superiority, because military superiority goes with what you have, your arsenal and what you have at your disposal. You can't just be military superior to anybody. And then it also defines that level of independence, that we are independent, we are having these things, and we are leading these things, and we are dictating this thing, and we can do this thing without anybody questioning us, and we can do it in any way, but also not always the way they want. Because in any global order, there's always the opposition, there's always dissenting, and then there's always going to be a law of critical meetings about what is going to happen and what is not going to happen, even though that sometimes they can bypass these things to begin to show their military superiority. So we also have these large military budgets from different countries. Even though they are independent, it also contributes to them seeing themselves as superior to others. And then this is not something we can just fight in a day. This is something somebody can just design and honestly plan in a strategic way to know how to handle it, and then how to strategically dismantle it before the person can begin. Because I see where this thing is coming from. And if we also watch the comment that has been made against our own beautiful country lately, it's been contributing a lot to global debate. But it's something very funny, but it's just something that is also telling a couple of people that we're not going to get it, because it's slightly a little bit interesting, but also something we can see from a global perspective, that this thing is not just happening anyhow. It is happening because there is a support within that global community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You know, when I was referring to a strong military, you know that many conquests over time and space, have been as a result of the might of the conquering nations.
Yeah.
Because you cannot just even stand on your own if you don't have the arsenal and the military capability to stand on your
Yeah.
own. So
Yeah.
that's the point is that when you are militarily strong, you can dictate certain things, and you can try to configure the things that happen around the world. So, and that is exactly what we are feeling now in Nigeria, as a matter of fact,
Yeah.
with what
Yeah.
Donald Trump is doing.
Yeah.
So, but that one is just for another day, and
Yeah.
we may get there sometime. So, Jack, I want to ask you this question because it is a spark from this the question that I asked Onyemiri, that is relying on a foreign military for support. Because when you look at certain alliances like the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, you look
Yeah.
at whatever Russia is having as their own alliances. You understand that some people are carrying the major bulk of the financing of such military adventures. So for you to rely on a foreign military power for support, don't you think? Do you think it is wise? What are the
Um,
possible risks of relying on a foreign military
okay.
for support?
Yeah, you kind of mentioned some of the things I was going to base on, but in general, when you rely on something other than where you are for support, there's always the pros and cons of it. So, for example, if you rely on the military for support, they can always pull out. So, for example, I have had Trump, I don't know how many times or what country, but he would say, if you don't do so and so, you're not going to get the aids, So they're not going to, give the aid to that certain country. So Trump is always very, very big on that. So, for example, for Afghanistan, for example, they do rely heavily on the, like you mentioned, the NATO and the US for support. So when they do have that support, they always they have to be obliged to be under them. So it's always good. It's quite difficult, so it affects their stability when they rely so much on a foreign country for support, because they'll always be under them and be thinking, okay, if I do this, if I don't do this, this is going to happen. So for me, to rely on a foreign military for support, I'm not going to say it's good. I'm not going to say it's bad. That's pros and cons in all of them. So, like you mentioned, that's for Ukraine. They depend quite a lot on Western military for, and raises questions about it. So, in the long term, it's better that if a country can help it, that they don't rely on military for support, on foreign aids for support. But most countries cannot function without support. So I wouldn't say, in the good and the bad place of it. I think it is okay for military for the risk of having the support. So yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. It's always a risky venture to have to depend on foreigners for support, whether militarily or otherwise. So thank you very much, Jack. Mr. Nadi, we've talked a lot about economic self-reliance, the need to be self-reliant, not just economically, even culturally. Because of late, so many things are happening in the world today as a result of the effect of social media. So, do you think these affect the independence status of nations?
Well, T,
Yeah.
yeah, just like the speakers, the previous speakers have mentioned. I think one thing I was gonna highlight in what everybody else have actually said, that independence on its own is horror. If a country cannot control what they produce, if they cannot trade, if it cannot be sufficient enough, because what's the point of having independence? What does it actually mean? In our Africa cosmology, there is this sort of this thing we refer to settlement when you have served a master. When after serving and you have been given the freedom to go and become the business owner yourself, and then you are still have to depend on every day most of your commodities from your masters. It means you're not really independent. And I think Nkrumah will learn that lesson from one of the the famous Nkrumah quote that seek ye first the freedom, and every other thing will be added onto you. But that's not what we're having as a result, because in the context of Nigeria, we have this independence. It's been, I think it's over close to 60 years, and today we're still having a man from a different axis, making a tweet, and the entire armory of Nigerian system are in tremble. It stands if it doesn't gives you a better picture of what this independence is. That means we have to go back a bit to discover. But I think if we keep talking about the mayhems without actually making examples of how we have, this is not like a rocket science. We don't need to be all scientists to see all of these things. We can relate. Just from your previous question where you asked me, you can relate to history. Just look at China. Look at how China changed every bit of their humiliation into policies. That this is what the Western country came here. They presented to us a very skilled economic and business, propositions. And with what they proposed was, we are going to make a policy in our own society that from now moving forward, now that we have this independence in our land, no Chinese will have an unbalanced relationship or economic or business relationship with his brothers. They have seen that what where the strategy is, where the manpower is them being able to interpret all those sways from whether you call it Western influence and all of this, and turn all of these things, translate all of these things into a policy that will help their own citizens to be able to strive. And I'll tell you something, Mr. T. This is just the context of how this works with us is like a very handsome man with a very sweet and lovely golden handcuffs. And he is waving the flags. I got flag. I am free. You have a handcuff, but it's all golden. And that is that's the problem. If we cannot sit down and look at ourselves, and it's boiled down to the conversation we had the other time where I was making references to, for us to be able to domesticate our own problem, for us to be able to look at our problem, that if I am going to go to the university, I'm going to study the problem of Africa, the way we have to deal with problem in Africa, not just to obtain certificate, not to be on the pictures. No, we have to look at our problems and know that the major problem we have in our society is tribalism. That when we are casting the votes, we are not casting for competency. We're casting for the man that speaks my language. And that is what we need to be studying in schools. This is what we need to be examining. This is what we need to be converting to policies. And without all of these things, somebody tweet, in the next 50 years, if we don't go back to this drawing table and understand that this is where the problem is, if we're not able to sustain ourselves, if we're not able to provide for ourselves, if we are not, because I was listening to one of the most famous quote from Theresa May. I was listening to him. I think he was talking to the House of Parliament in one point, and I wrote that down. It was a very clever statement she made. She said that the security that we are mentioning goes down to the economic security, because if you want security in a society, people have to have economic security in their homes. They need to be able to provide food, because a man who cannot provide food in his house is very much pressured to take arms and start being an armed robber. So for you to have a security in the outside, people at home needs to have security in their kitchen. So for us to be able to have a sustainable independent, we have to be able to sit up to ourselves and be able to provide for ourselves. And one more quote before I leave. There's one quote from Churchill. He said to the British, "We rather eat stone than eat the bread from Germany, because one day the Germans are going to take their breads and we still go back to eat the stones." And it refers back to the idioms in our own place as well. When our forefathers used to use this conventional statement as well. They said, was it masquerade? Is it masquerade? What do you call it, Chief? It's not my English. It's not my first language. He said, yeah. He said to them. He said to his children, "You see, when you are harvesting the yam, harvest the root as well, because one day the owner of the yam will take everything, and then you will have not learned and adopted on how to eat the roots." So we have to start looking at our problem and being able to know that the only way we can be self-sufficient is when we can be able to provide for ourselves. Thank you, Mr. T. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. Thank you very much. That was a good one. Thank you. Oh, Mary, in this conversation about independence, the requirements of independence, and what role do you think education can play or is playing in this conversation?
Well, anyway, education is playing a holistic role, or let me just put it like comprehensive role. As I said, we just have to understand that there is no independence without interdependence. That's fact. So whether we're building our economic strategy or whether we are looking at education, and I have mentioned earlier that education is not just about the certificate, it's about the tool that you have gained through the process of being educated. It's not just about the certificate. That certificate is one part of the education, which means that with education, you have, even in a different course or in a different program, you can always use that education to adapt in another system. Because for you to have a competent media, you need to have education that can give you the energy and then the power to question, to hold powers accountable. Because our lawmakers, most of the times, are not holding the powers accountable. And then what we are having as a benchmark that we need to rely on, it's just getting frustrated or even frustrating the audience or the people. Because if you can't hold the leaders to account, why do we exist? We don't exist. It is this education that will empower you, give you the boldness to stand and speak out against abnormalities, against wrongs in the society. And an independence, when you're building your economic model, when you're building your political model, you're always going to be interdependent, realizing that even if you are self-sufficient in your own way within your own country, you also have to be interdependent to another country. If you separate what China is benefiting, like the comments, you see what's going on now, like the comment Chinese are making in our society about what the other guy has said in Nigeria. China has never been able to say such thing, but it's because of their interest. But an average person who don't understand the game might think that China has got interest to protect us. No, China makes a lot of money from us because they are interdependent on us. That is the way it works. So China cannot produce this thing without selling it. If you go online, you see that their target market, because we have 240 to 50 to 60 million people, that's the largest market in Africa and one of the largest market in the world. So whatever you pitch on this population, it's always going to yield a lot of economic benefit. While we are being sufficient is not just to design your economic system that's going to make you self-reliant or self-sufficient. You also need to design a robust and competitive economic system that can push beyond your boundary. Because if everything you have is just about you or being self-reliant without extending it, without exporting, it means that your economic model is weak. So education empowers you to build this model and define this model according to your needs, not the needs of others. So education is always going to be playing an important role. If you come back and somebody says, I am educated, it means that that person has gotten the tool to think and put those mechanisms into action in developing what can make them independent. Any society who is independent to a large extent is also interdependent to a large extent, in the sense that you have to be selling to yourself, but also be exporting, because the level of things you have, the level of your economic standard or economic height or economic power depends not only on your consumption, but also what you export. So you see now, if you don't have a good political relationship with a particular country, you might get a sanction. That's why we need this education. That education also makes you to be diplomatic in knowing when and when not to cross the boundary. Because that education also, like, if somebody is in the forefront of promoting human rights, somebody says, in this global order, we have G7. This is part of what education is empowering people to do. We have G7. And so another person is also saying, oh, I'm not going to go to South Africa because I believe that it's just about my country. Because they have the education which have made them to make something proud of their country. And then they also export in different countries. Without export, you are not economically powerful. So education should be seen as this lens through which we can see from within ourselves, but also across our without ourselves and across to the other side of the border. Because if you can see to the other side of the border, it means that we are not seeing the comprehensive picture of what education can do. Education is a powerful instrument, but when you have education and you're still crying, you're still blaming people, that education deserves to be questioned. Because it's not just about, that was what I was telling you about what civilization has done. Civilization has left for us that education whereby we rely on defining whatever we have through the lens of another person's education, because the person is powerful and is part of that civilization. And for you to do this, it's not about talking, it's about strategically going back to drawing board, to draw your own curriculum, to draw your own education in a way that suits your system and in a way that will empower your system. And once your system is powered in your national context or in your own country, that system will be powered beyond your own country in the geopolitical context. And after the geopolitical context, that economy will be powered, or education will be powered beyond geopolitical context to supranational context, whereby when somebody is talking in, somebody can say, I am qualified to get into the G7 and we have what it takes. You're not saying that we have what it takes because you're saying it because the whole world is saying what you take. How much education can empower us to do is beyond what we can think about. It's beyond our own reason, because education will make it possible for you to start seeing the need of promoting what you produce, not promoting what you produce through the lens of saying made in America or made in China just because of people to buy it. It takes a lot for education to sink into us, and it takes a lot of time for education to sink into us in a way that cultivates us and motivates us to become the fore and front player in the global order. There's always going to be global order, and when the more interesting thing about global order is that there's always going to be a shift, the power shift. There was a time Britain was powerful. There was a time Germany was powerful. There was a time Egypt was powerful. There was a time Greece was powerful. But all these things, all these geopolitical powers move, and education will make you to be strategically aligning, but also building your own, trying to build your own model in a way that in the end it will come out to be the global power. If you don't do it, nobody will do it. Education it is also good to have certificates, as I've mentioned several times, but it's not just about certificates. It's good because if you see education through the lens of celebrating or just jumping out that you've graduated, that means that is just the starting point of education. So education plays an important role in defining a society that is independent and also a society that is capable of being interdependent. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was a good one and beautifully rendered. Thank you. Jackie, I'll throw this question at you now. At least you've come back from Rwanda. It's part of the the interplay of movement of people across boundaries. My question is, how can a country be truly independent while being a member of international organizations? You know what I mean? World Bank, IMF, and all those, ICC, and all those. Can a country be truly independent when you are, when you are a member of some of these world organizations?
I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues on Friday actually. So she's from Barbados. So Barbados is known as Little England.
Yeah.
So it was the first place where all the African slaves were taken to the Caribbean. So Barbados was the first place that they were taken to. So in that sense, it's known as Little England. So everything in Barbados is all about British, all about the Commonwealth, you know, because they're part of the Commonwealth. So,
Yeah.
but they have a new prime minister, so a lady prime minister. So what she has done now is single-handedly, one by one, she's removing every single connection they have with the British. So, for example, they have the Nelson's column or the Nelson statue in some place in Barbados, in the middle of their state. So, what they've done, they have removed that during the Black Lives Matter movement and put that in the museum. So, everything relating to England, they want to remove it. Even though they're still part of Commonwealth, they want to be in a such situation where they will withdraw themselves as part of the Commonwealth, and they actually, according to my colleague, they don't want anything to do with the British because it's a bad experience for them, and they have been independent for about 40 years. So yeah, so can a country actually be, truly independent while being a member of international organization? It depends on how you look at it. So a country can be, for example, with the Barbados, they want to remove themselves. They don't want to belong to British. They just want to be Barbados, Caribbean. That's it. And if anything, they want to deal with Africans more than they want to deal with the UK. So a country can actually be independent while being part of international organization. So when we look at Sweden, for example, Sweden is part of the EU. And within the EU, every single one of them is using the euro. So I've traveled quite a bit in, Europe, and all of them, most of them, France, Spain, most of them, uses euro. But when you go to Sweden, they are probably the only country in EU that does not use the euro. So they're standing by themselves. So this can be a good thing because yes, they are part of the European Union, but they're not associating with themselves with their currency. And so they're not associating with the currency as well, which shows that you can still be part of you can still be independent, and you can still be independent, you can still be part of the international organization,
Organizations,
yeah,
yeah.
but still have your own kind of little thing, like this is for me, I don't touch it. And also when we go back and we look at some country like Ethiopia as well, it's part of the African Union, but it also asserts itself independent. It has its own like policies, cooperation, sovereignty, and all that. So the question is, you can be part of, you can be independent and also be part of the another organization, as long as you de-associate yourself and have your own stand where you can look at and say, okay, this is this and that is that. And we talk more about them, the Rwanda and all those things, but it will take too long. But I will mention that again in give you the experience. But yeah, so to answer your question, yeah, you can still be part of independent and also be part of organization, and it does work depending on how you look at it. Some people like Caribbean in Barbados, they don't think it will work for them, but in other countries like Sweden, it does work for them.
Okay.
I think Mr. T, just a second. I think just to support what our sister said, it's part of what we call that thing I was saying about economic. This is economic independence. That independence are of different types. Somebody can be politically interdependent, but also become economically dependent, or also a country might be legally dependent, or I mean independent, and also be media independent, but also in a way cede their autonomy, some part of their autonomy to the larger global order. In this case, Sweden is economically independent, but also have ceded their political and legal and part of their other autonomy to the European Union, making it a supernatural, because the law, any law coming from the EU is superior to any law coming from here. And that's how it works. So we need independence, but also we need to be interdependent to be independent in the modern world. Thank you.
Yeah, just like Jackie said, you know, there are some aspects of this interdependence or belonging to international organizations that are not quite in the interests of some nations. Take, for example, the ICC. The very authors of ICC are not members of the ICC, but you see them take people to ICC and get a lot of convictions. But those who are the major pillars carrying ICC are actually not members. They didn't sign in. They didn't sign the declaration. You know, they've not been able to domesticate the treaties and all the laws. You know, given
and you can also and you can also not cede your sovereignty, but also use this mechanism as a way to support your own country. Because if we have an open, transparent, and accountable government, that's where this issue of supporting your own country by borrowing, because you borrow to develop your country, not to borrow, not to borrow to embezzle them. Because if you embezzle them, what is the essence of borrowing all this money? So what we see here is that because we don't have that political independence, we don't have that capacity to have a public government based on high legitimacy of the people, dependent on public trust, and also dependent on justice. So because we don't have them, what we have there is still political dependent and economic dependent and everything dependent. As long as you're using those institutions to promote equity and fairness in your country, every country is interdependent in terms of economy. So I mean, most countries are interdependent in terms of economy, and then most countries are owing one thing or the other. So what we see here is that a situation whereby somebody can be honest to tell themselves the truth and say, I want to use this institution to help develop my country, but not just about borrowing and sharing it among the leaders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Emery. Thank you. Sam, I come with you on this. You know, what structures do you think should be in place for a country to be truly adjudged as being truly independent? What structures, when they are in place, will just approximate to independence for a country?
Well, I wouldn't say there is a certain yardstick, but I think the central argument from anybody would always go to this: the independence requires not just the symbolic sovereignty. It goes beyond that. It goes deep into institutional integrity and the system resilience. You know, a nation's freedom is only as strong as its constitution. Is as strong as not just the constitution, but being able to uphold those constitutions. And this is where the story gets a bit tricky, because a lot of people attempts to look at it from, oh, we have to do this and we have to do that. There is no certain, or standard that you have to follow. Well, just relating to what our sister Jackie have just said about what the people in the Caribbeans are doing. But the central point of all of these things is being able to domesticate it. I use this word all the time, and I think anybody that is listening to me should take a lesson on how things can be domesticated. You can look at things from your own problem. Because let me give you a context to this. You look at Ghana. Ghana at a certain point was the pioneer post-colonial regime, because they were among the first Africans to gain their independence. But what did the the independence that they got from the Western civilization. Why did it fade away? Because Ghana at that point centralized their system into everything about Ghana was actually centralized into this man called Kwame Nkrumah. Nkrumah was like, he was, Kwame Nkrumah. He was like the Messiah. He was like the hero. But if you're looking at it from that angle, if we talk about what's this guy again in Singapore? No, in Singapore. The guy in Singapore who is a similar kind of contest with what Ghana wanted to do with Kwame Nkrumah. That man individually, mostly, if I will use the word, individually pulled Singapore to whatever you want to call it today. But it doesn't necessarily work in Ghana, because Ghana is a different society. They have a different mentality. They have a different culture. They have a different structure. So the point about what I'm trying to explain, and if you go even on the other hand to a place like Botswana, you see that the Botswana, on the other hand, in contrast, did the opposite of what the Ghanaians did. The Botswana, they structured their system that nobody is the Messiah. If we are not the Messiah of each other, nobody will become the Messiah. And it works for the Botswanas, because as it stands now, the Botswana system is actually, striving to become an example. So, so the point I'm trying to make is that that's the point that is very central to this conversation. We being able to domesticate our problem, we being able to look at ourselves and see ourselves from where our problem is, and being able to solving those problems based on our own solution. You understand? So, in the context, if I'm going to bring it back to the society where we come from, we are all from Nigeria. We all need to see that we have worked on this path for a long time. We have worked on this path since after independence. Which part of what I call self-sufficiency, or which sort of sovereignty are we actually sustainable? Are we going to talk about the healthcare? Are we sustainable in our healthcare? And I have a bit sympathy with what my brother Onyemeli have said about nobody lives in isolation. I understand that is actually fascinating as well, but you need to be able to live before you even devised if you're going to live with others. If you don't have a home, if people who have homes, and if they call out people who have homes, you're not going to come and clout with them. You're not going to congregate. You're not going to answer presents when you don't have no home. So you need to have a certain sufficiency on your own. You need to be able to survive at least. Like I mentioned, if we are sufficient enough, if maybe we are good in education, while the Chinese is good in technology, or maybe the Indians are good in medicine, and then we are good in this and that, then we can have something that we are presenting to the table, that we are using to actually have this relationship. Otherwise, we are just going to be a ripoff. We're going to be the proper ripoff of others, because we're not coming in with anything. We're just coming in to be the parasite, or just to be the dependent on everybody else. We have nothing to offer in return. So that's the point I'm trying to make. We have to build that structure. That structure has to come internally. It has to come not based on what we have been, structured to be like. Because if you give me a little bit time, if I will expose to you the kind of structure that we have in the country that makes things not working, it will make even more sense that what we have actually in our own structure is an anti-structure. We have a structure that only reward people for job well done, that you've done well. Not by you are merited. You merit this position. You merit this award. You merit this. You merit that. Because this is what the people who build this structure, this is what they design. Because they just want some doormen or some gatekeepers who will just be in the gate to extract those resources and sending it back to them. And these are the ones that are being, presented as the intelligent or the bureaucrats of the society. So for us to have that conversation, we have to, first of all, sit down among ourselves and see that the structure, the system we are working on is not actually working, that is anti ourselves. Then we can be able to redesign this structure according to the algorithm in our own society. That is the only way, that is the only structure that will amplify. I don't know if that answers your question, Mr. T. Thank you.
That's a beautiful one. Thank you very much, because you know, what you define as independence can always it should be very, very autonomous, kind of from within. So
what did you call this one? Autonomous?
When something is coming from within, you know, yeah, that's what I mean. Thank you very much. Mary, you know, certain recognitions have been done over time that conferred independence, like many African countries where it took the recognition by the international communities to, you know, confer independent status on them. The recent one is in I think South Sudan, where after the referendum was done, you know, certain countries of the world started. What are the how do you see that recognition affecting independent status of nations? Because take for instance, the last time the embassy of America was moved from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Just by a single nation moving that, it conferred a kind of status on Jerusalem, which so many other nations had not even thought of. But with that singular act, you know, Jerusalem became a kind of attraction that it never was before the movement of American embassy to that city. So, to what extent does international recognition define independence?
Okay, I'll say thank you so much. We've been talking about independence, and we said that no society or country lives in a vacuum, because we are always entangled. Like I said earlier, we're always entangled in one treaty or one ally or trade agreement and all of those things. So, but if we look at those recognitions, they're not actually they're not actually defining the independence of a particular society according to their culture, and that's not actually what independence means. They are also saying that they want to be self-ruling. They want to dictate their laws and everything, but they haven't actually been able to look through their own cultural definition of what they want. And this is what also happened to most countries in Africa, because telling you that recognizing you as a country, just like they recognize some of the countries that are not even recognized in the overall international body, is one thing, but also becoming independent is another thing. Because when you claim that you are independent since 1960, or that Sudan is just independent, but you're still fighting wars, that's what I'm telling you, that everybody, when I was mentioning about isolation, I wasn't talking about isolation in terms of you going back to build until you become self-reliant. That will not work anywhere in the world, and that will not be feasible anywhere in the world, because China was not self-reliant. China just put out a policy there, and that's also what we see as part of social developed countries. China put out a policy somewhere. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Because something happened now. So China put out a policy somewhere and told the whole world, come on and invest. We all know about this history. Come and invest. And up to today, if you go to value chain, China is playing an important role in value chain, even though China is a communist country. So China is also dependent on what the capitalist man has defined, because China realized that they need capitalism, because we have to be seeing this thing in the actual lens where practical things are working, not in the more theoretical side. China saw that they needed capitalism to add value to communism, and the moment they accepted capitalism, people started coming to their place. But that didn't make China to see their own the whole sovereignty. China is still interdependent in the trade independence in the world. China is interdependent in trade as far as having trade agreements are concerned. Otherwise, we all saw what happened to Huawei in Europe. Today, Huawei is no longer in Europe because of that interdependence. But before, when China was in good terms with Europeans and the Americans, Huawei was selling a lot here. But it's just because of that interdependence and that definition I'm telling you, when you allow those recognition and say, okay, we want to have independence in 1960, want to have independence in 1958, want to have independence in 1964, but are you prepared to govern yourself? Are you prepared to set all those mechanisms around you, the legal framework? Are you prepared to set it in such a way that will determine and be interpreted and be defined through your own culture, but also that will determine the future justices that will be enacted in your own country? Are you prepared? So if you're not prepared, it's not just for a group of people coming to say like, oh, we want a referendum, we want this. Of course, if you hold referendum, you're always going to win. But after the referendum, what happens? Sorry, before going further, I was watching the speech of the Caribbean president, and I was honestly thrilled when she went to speak in African Union. I don't know. I don't know if you heard about it. If you've listened to that speech before, what is the name of it?
Is it Jack?
Is it for Barbados? Is it the lady from Barbados?
Yes. Have you listened to that speech when she went to African Union to speak? Okay. It was such an amazing speach. I was telling you this thing. It was such an amazing speech, and I was telling you this. Even the president of Jamaica called the president of Burkina Faso a dictator. Then, but after a while, the president of Jamaica came to African Union and apologized, because what the president of Burkina Faso is doing is that we no longer want. As far as we want allies, because they have allies, you must have ally, and that is what I call that interdependence. You must be interdependent on something, otherwise you can't live in isolation. I'm betting you, no matter how you build yourself. So people can sanction you, people can do whatever because they're more powerful. So what you have to apply your brain. Those recognitions, I'm afraid that most of them got independence, what they defined as independence, through the lens of the definition of independence from the outside, from the Western world, and then from other parts of the world. So when you do this, what happens? You begin to see this education, instead of defining education through your own culture and heritage and your art, you begin to see education as, okay, if I have A, I'm very intelligent. If I have B, I'm very intelligent. If I have F, I'm not intelligent. Who says this? Somebody can be good in a formal education, but somebody might not be good in a non-formal education, or in other type of education. Because, or in an informal education, somebody might not be good there, but you're good in theory, but you might not be good in practice, because there are many professors that will not fix a car if you give it to them, but yet they are professors. So if you look at those definitions those recognitions were done haphazardly, and then they accepted it without even sitting down to define what their culture accepts and what their culture rejects. We're also considering, because in a culture, you have to consider intercultural communication, but also you have to think about how to accommodate other cultures before you can become that person you want to be. Because always you have to have tourism in your country, as a developed country, anywhere in the world. So what we're saying here is that people rush to be recognized as an independent country, but they're not prepared to lead themselves. Tell me one country in Africa that can boastfully say, we have independent. In the way independent is fully defined, we have rule of law, we have justice system, we have institutions, we have good trade negotiations, we have independent media, we have all these things, all social, well-established social welfare. So if you look at all these things, you see that when things are done haphazardly without good reasoning, you see that it's always going to be about bad way of viewing that thing. So we're saying today, saying that you're independent is not just enough. Look at what happened to the UK. In terms of that independent we're talking about, UK is recognized now as being independent from the EU. UK was in the EU, where UK ceded their own level of independence to the EU. But at a certain point, UK said, we want to be recognized as non-EU country. But if you say today, that recognition was also rushed. It's not just about Africa, because we tend to see one country. As I said before, no country is completely independent. So look at all this picture. You see that EU rushed this thing, and it's affecting them till today. They still have this part of European Convention of Human Rights Law that is making everything unbearable for them, especially Article 8 and Article 3. So that if you look at Texas now, if you look at New York, these are all independent to some extent state that's also collaborating and working with the whole circle of America. So it's not just about why is it that each state in America does not or cannot declare recognition of an independent country today. They are all equally independent country as far as the population of country in the world matter. So what we see here today is that rushing to recognize you is not enough. Otherwise, you will continue to have problem. It's also nice to critically see it and look at your own culture, look at your own heritage, and look at your own art, and look at what you're capable of accepting and rejecting, and say, we want to define independence through the lens of this thing so that it will become a legacy to the current and future generations. As far as we are looking at something that we can leave as a legacy, not when we die, we begin to have a lot of problems. And just because we've rushed, just because we've rushed this independence, many countries in Africa, that's why those definitions and those recognitions are still working on us, because we can't run away from it. Today, all of our military personnel are suddenly running helter and skelter because of one statement from one particular person. So that's what we need to do, not just to accept rushed recognition, but to look at and assess and evaluate to what extent those recognition can benefit the generations that will live to acclaim this recognition. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Thank you. That was a long one and very, very elucidating at the same time. Jack, finally for you, I just want to ask you, in view of the things that are happening in most countries, not just in Africa, even in the Middle East, Hamas doing their thing, even in Iran, all those terrorist organizations, Nigeria, civil unrest everywhere. Can a nation be truly independent if it lacks unity among its citizenry?
Yeah, so like we know that it says charity begins at home. So before you do anything, you need to sort out your home first before you go out and sort out other people's home. In terms of, for a country to be independent, it needs to come together with its citizens. It needs to make sure that they listen to the citizen, because it's the citizen that will promote or demote whichever country it is. For example, Onyemere mentioned about Burkina Faso. So Burkina Faso is protected by the citizens. If you read, I was watching a program about him. Some of the citizens, they sleep around where he is, sleep outside, protect him, because he is doing so much for them.
Thank you.
Like my colleague said, the Barbados are looking at Burkina Faso and say, they are doing a good work. We don't need all these foreign people.
Yeah.
It might be a good decision, it might be a bad decision, but they want to take away, as she put it, they want to take away anything to do with England, because they believe that England is not helping them, but they're just collecting from them. So the Prime Minister, like I mentioned previously, wants to take away everything to do with England. as they are known, Little Britain from them. So for you to be independent, your citizen needs to be amongst you. You need to listen to your citizen. So they really do recognize the Barbados president. They really listen to them. So for anyone that wants to, so without your citizen, no, I don't think you will be truly independent. If we look at, I went to Uganda and Rwanda last week. So you can see that, Rwanda came, we went to the museum. There was so much things like what happened in Rwanda because of the ethnic war, because of the Hutus and the Tutsi. But if you go there today, you will see such a difference, because according to the person that was, touring us, they said they came together and said, you know what, we are one Rwanda. We don't need to define ourselves as the Hutus or the Tutsis. We are one Rwanda, and they came together as citizens, and they have built Rwanda so perfectly. I wish I could show the picture. I wish you could see the video of how amazing. It's even cleaner than England. You're driving through Rwanda, everywhere you go, it's so clean. It's cleaner than England. Not only is cleaner than England, if you put anything, if you are fined, you will be fined if you put any rubbish on the floor. That's how strict they are. So yeah, that's how strict they are. So without the citizens, I don't believe that true independence will occur. And then you look at Nigeria, we have the people, during the election, you talk about the Yorubas, the Igbos, the this, the that. We're supposed to be one Nigerians. That's the only way that we can actually, yes, we are independent, but we're supposed to be one Nigeria. And as one Nigeria, we can achieve a lot, especially all these, the people at the top. If they come together and say, you know what, we're not going to embezzle money, we're not going to do that, we need to come together as one Nigeria, there will be unity, and then we can see the true independence. We've been independent since 1960. You can't really see anything, So compared to, for example, I'm using Rwanda because I was just there last week. You go there, 1994 to 1996, the whole country was a mess. The roads were not even tarred, like everything was a mess. But now look at it. And then you go to Uganda, which is 45 minutes away. It's such a different contrast. In Uganda, they still have the rest stand. Most of their roads are not tarred. It's just so much difference, considering that the prime minister or the president in Uganda has been there for 40 years. They have election coming in January. They want to make their country better, but without the president still wanting to be there after 40 years, things will not get better. So coming to your question, I believe that for you to actually be independent, you need your citizen along. Your citizen along. Like I mentioned earlier, charity begins at home. So yeah. So in conclusion, I would believe that for a country to have independence, they need to carry their citizens along. They need to have their opinion. They need to come together as one for it to work.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. A country is as good as its citizenry. So it's the citizens that will carry the country and take the country to wherever they want it to be. Anything short of that, we're just playing the ostrich. Onyemere, in just 1 minute, can you just give us your final on this topic? In just 1 minute, please.
Well, I think I just want to say that I think we reinforced what we've said in one way or the other. Even the last one also was also echoing almost the same thing, that we need a definition of what we mean by independence. And then if you don't define what a concept means for you through your own lens of how you view things, not through the lens of how others view it, it's always going to be a catastrophic way of seeing it or of implementing it, because that's not your concept. And that's what has been happening in our continent and in our countries here and there. And also, it goes back to what our sister said about Burkina Faso. When I was mentioning things, you see that Burkina Faso, the Burkina Base, they call them Burkina Babes or something like that. They're not looking at whether the president is a military one, because The military interdependence is somewhere. The guy realized the power of military interdependence, and then he went to Russia, and then realizing that it's not just about being blind, folded, or brainwashed to believe in one system. So he said, no, I want to try a different system. And then the society loves him because he's defining that independence according to their culture in a way that models their own culture. Look at the law, the court of law in Burkina Faso. You cannot wear all those white hat and brown gown. No, you can't wear it. You have to wear things that showcases your own culture of who you are. If you go to the banks, and even Nigerians are doing well now in the banks now. So these things are what we're talking about. So no society exists in a vacuum. We need each other. As much as independence is the capacity to rule yourself, and then the capacity to make sure that in ruling yourself, you have the legitimacy of the people, whereby the legitimacy encourages public trust, and then whereby public trust encourages justice. We need to understand that we have to be independent, and we have to define independence in a way that suits us, not in a way that suits all the people. For example, we cannot say that Cameroon is independent. The president's 92 years, he quashed everything about the power of education, and the Minister of Justice is 80-something years. All of the people that are leading them in the speaker, all of them are all octogenarians. So what I'm saying here is that we need applicable intelligence in understanding the power of being independent, but also being able to understand the power of being interdependent to the right person, and also being able to negotiate in the global order, not by being dictated or pushed, or by being dependent on anything. Being able to have a voice in the global order and say, this is what we want as a continent, this is what we want as a country, not in a way that influences you negatively against your people. And then also, I want to encourage all of us to not give up and to not say that we are completely independent until today, because for now, we haven't demonstrated the ability to lead ourselves because we're not yet independent. What we're going to be doing is the continuous struggle whereby we continue pushing as a united force in making sure that we realize the power and the embodiment of independence in our country. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Jack, in 1 minute, give us your final on this.
Sorry, what was that?
In 1 minute, just we're concluding. What is your final on this? What is your final?
So my final thought is every country that needs to be independent needs a citizen. They need to be self-sufficient. They need to work together as a team. They need to be together. Basically, without each other, we cannot be independent truly, and without each other, we cannot achieve most things. So each country, whether it's British, whether it's whatever country, we need each other to function. But there comes a time that we have to stand up for ourselves and say, okay, we have done this, we have come this far. So we need to stand up for ourselves, and we have the resources to stand up for ourselves, because there's no point standing up for yourself without any resources. So yeah, in my final thought, it's good to be independent, but like Onyemo said, we do need each other to interconnect, but we still need to be independent as well and stand up for ourselves, and then reach out for help when it's needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack, and thank you guys for this. Sam incidentally just left. I don't know what happened there, but I just noticed that it's no more here. But all the same, I want to thank you guys for just putting everything here on the floor of the studio. Just like we do every Sunday, we come in here and we lay everything bare as much as we understand them and as much as we know them. Thank you guys. And thank you for the guys who have stayed the time with us. It's always been fun having to talk to some people while while you're discussing such things, and you get to know that there are some people who are interested in what you're talking about. Like I always say, we are not just doing content for content's sake. We are doing content that is meant to help us understand the issues, help us in decision making, and help us in going forward with our lives. That is why we're here, because what you do not know is a mystery to you. And there are so many mysteries out there. Until you get to understand some of these things, they continue to remain mysteries to you. And I just want to thank our esteemed audience, the guys who stayed with us. I wouldn't want to begin to mention you guys, but you know yourself. And I just want to appreciate you, especially for having made out the time to be with us. And on the final note, we just notice that there is nothing like absolute independence. It's not there. The world is a global village. Everybody is interdependent. You are dependent on somebody for raw materials. The one is depending on you for the finished good. So there's this interdependence, but it depends on how you enter into that narrative, into that conversation. Are you going in there as somebody who is ordered to do something, or are you going in there on the position of strength? Negotiation should be on the position of strength. You're not coming there to be dictated to what to do. And you know, if you're going into any such thing, there's need for you to understand your historical and cultural DNA. They will help you to understand what you're going into, what your bargaining chips are, and how you bargain in such a situation. It is also important for you to be well educated. You know, when you're coming from the position of having education, you'll be able to understand your strength and your weaknesses, and how you can gain more from whatever the structure or whatever the situation presents that presents on the international scene. And importantly, it is important for you to have a very, very cohesive and well coordinated and educated citizenry. These are the guys who can push you and who can at the same time tell you that we don't need this. We need this, and they push you, just like Jack pointed out in Burkina Faso. People rally around their president because they know he's a symbol of their independence, and they are not joking with that. They make sure that it's kept alive, even when they know that there are some attempts have been made, probably to take him off. But in all this, it is important for us to have all these things, bring them into context, and define for ourselves what independence is all about. When you cannot define issues or things for yourself, you obviously will be, these things will be defined for you, and whatever definition any other person gives to you, that is what you take. So having said that, what we are talking about does not just relate to the country as entities. We are talking to individuals also, because when you are entering into any negotiation, anything, you should be very, very mindful of what you are entering into. So having said that, I want to thank you guys for having made out the time to be with us. I want to thank the panelists for always leaving everything here on the floor. And from me and the rest of the crew on our side, I want to thank our audience and say have a wonderful night. And then we're going to be back again by next Sunday with something that will equally be interesting, if not more interesting than what we have now. From me, Jack, and Onyemere, it is bye now. Thank you, guys.
Take care.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Bye.